Now, I know Sonic 3 is supposed to go with Sonic and Knuckles, but I figured just for the hell of it, I would take them like they were released and play Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles separately, reviewing each one as their own game, and then at the end of the Sonic and Knuckles episode, I'll do a quick review of them as a single unit and see if it changes my thoughts on either of them when considering it one game. Anyway, this is Sonic Saturday, the show where I'm attempting to play every single Sonic game week to week to fully immerse myself in the franchise. Today, we're covering Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Sonic 3 is everything a sequel to Sonic 2 should be. These zones are the best this franchise has produced so far, and everything feels so fast and fluid. Everything was so bright and colorful and absolutely bursting with life, and it made this game a joy to go through. I think this currently has surpassed Sonic CD as my favorite game so far, and I suspect that when I play Sonic 3 and Knuckles as a whole, that will be my favorite. But there's also a few things I want to talk about. The music was the weakest of the series so far. I was playing this on the Origins collection, so I know it's not the original music. I really thought the music in this port was bland, and none of them stood out super well like in the previous entries. I have listened to the original soundtrack from the Genesis cartridge, and like almost everyone always says, it's leagues better. I kinda wish I could have played the game with the soundtrack, and someday I just might, just to say that I have. Beyond that, as previously mentioned, the zones in this game are fantastic. So many of them have such an insane sense of speed, and some cool new things to play with, like the balloons in Carnival Night or the red switches in Launch Base, among a ton of other things. These things really add a lot of depth to the traversal of the levels, and how lovely they felt. The only zone I wasn't the biggest fan of was Marble Garden Zone, as I felt like there were a couple of really unfair sections, and a whole zone doesn't really flow the same way that the rest of the game does. Especially since it follows the really strong Hydro City zone. Another note about the levels that make them so good is how, unlike the other games, they're dynamic. In Angel Island, Robotnik lights the island on fire, so Act 2 is now on fire. Or the water levels can change by the control of Robotnik or Knuckles in Hydro City Zone. I also really appreciate how they are actually all connected in some way via cutscenes, as just like my feelings on CD with this, it just makes the game feel so much more complete when the zones connect like they do. The cutscenes are a really nice addition. We had minor ones in the past, but these ones are really fun and actually do a fair job setting up the relationship between Sonic and Knuckles. I plan on playing the game again from Knuckles' perspective soon, and I'm excited to see how the cutscenes differ on his side of the story. The bosses in this game are also fairly interesting, especially considering now how we get 2 bosses per zone instead of just Eggman. I never found any of the Act 1 bosses interesting, so to say, because they typically would go down in 2 seconds and pose no threat. The Act 2 Robotnik fights, however, were at least interesting in certain areas, even if ultimately it just came down to just jumping and hitting him like always. I think my favorite was the boss where he drew you in with his electricity, as timing your running to make sure you stayed out of the tractor beam added an extra layer to the fight. There was also the final boss, which, to my memory, is the first Sonic boss with multiple phases. I thought they were all pretty cool, and watching the Death Egg fall, I know I'm nearing the end of the quote-unquote good games, but I'm honestly impressed with how well these games have held up so far, even if the first Sonic game isn't the best. Anyway, I'll see you next week for Sonic and Knuckles, and a combined review. What's your favorite part of Sonic 3? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe while you're down there. Thanks for watching!